Got our recording started. This is Professor Globe. We're into week 7 and the midway point. Let's get the lecture slides shared out. Get those into read mode, which they are. We are sharing, so we're going to get started. All right, students, we're into week 7. Our topics are insider threat, doing a cyber defense, technology overview, which is we're going to go over some of the technologies that you could do your term project over, and then do a quick midterm review, hitting the topics that'll be covered on your midterm, which is all inclusive. That includes the chapter readings from your book. There's questions incorporated from your reading into the midterm, in addition to the lecture slides. 1 second here. Sorry, I'm still dealing with allergies. Sneeze there. All right, let's get started. Insider threats. So who are insider threats? Potentially. They could be carelessness from a coworker or neglect, just no longer patching a system or maintaining a system to keep it configured securely, not managing known neglect is not managing your domain server. So as employees leave the organization, you don't remove or disable their accounts. So they still have valid logins and permissions to the system. So neglect. A malicious employee, for whatever reason, and we'll go over some of the potential triggers that could turn a employee to a insider threat. A criminal or criminal group, a disgruntled employee, volunteer, or contractor. So again, insider threats could be your coworker who you're working with, staff, seasonal support, contractual support, technical support, where you may give them temporary access and they create accounts on your system without your knowledge, basically backdoors into your environment. Trusted staff, managers, executives, those are traditionally who the threat actors are. Emergent or, again, seasonal and line staff, partisan boards where politics come into play, local elected officials, political action groups, poll workers, volunteers of all ages, partisan observers who may think your company is leaning too far to the left or to the right. So they gain employment to become an insider threat. And based on social media posting, people make decisions about an organization. Common triggers: they're angry about something, want revenge, divided loyalty. They want to be a good employee, but they have political considerations, or passionate about a certain topic that turns them. Problems at work. It could be bullying, just like at school. Could be various problems. Ego or self-esteem, because they have the knowledge. That was definitely a strong trigger. Retaliation for something that happened, or just want to do bad things, compulsive or destructive. Some of those newer ones, they want to change the outcome of something. Elections is a common one now. They want to change the outcome of the election. So they go work for a local electoral or voting organization and to try to disrupt or change the outcome. for monetary reasons. You hear a lot about that in the news. Undermine public confidence and ideology. Common organizational factors that could trigger insider threat. They could range from lax policies and procedures. Employees are aligned to run short. Employees are given elevated privileges when when their job function doesn't really require it. Policies are not enforced, so nobody ever gets in trouble. Just get a slap on the wrist. That could be definitely a trigger. Again, because they have access to sensitive information, and they're in charge of monitoring the system. Especially an admin that wears many hats. They're the admin, they're the security operations center, they're the network operations. So they wear many hats, or lack of robust security awareness training where you don't have a way to anonymously report potential malicious activity among coworkers. Some behavioral indicators, without the need authorization, people want access or they're viewing sensitive information. They are working unusual hours and there's no project that require it. Unreported foreign contacts, engage in suspicious social media posting of misinformation, short trips to foreign countries. Again, these are some kind of like typical behavior ones that you want to watch out for. A report done back in 2022, not that long ago, the cost of credential theft in an organization increased by 65% from 2.8 million in 2020 to almost 5 million in 2022, and it continues to go up. The cost of your credentials being compromised. The time to contain an insider threat is on average 85 days. Wow, that's over 3 months to do that. Incidents that took more than 90 days to contain cost the organization on average $17 million. Very expensive, very expensive. Common defensive actions you can take. Educate regularly, train employees on security and other data handling, labeling, and distribution policies and procedures. Ensure that proprietary information is adequately secured and only people who have a need for their job function has access, a role-based access control, multi-factor authentication, use appropriate screening processes and background checks on your employees. All these help. Organizations need to do their part. So as far as intellectual property theft, um, make sure to provide non-threatening ways to report potential malicious activity. Um, Make sure that you're following a governance framework so you can control access. You're doing the right things to control access to sensitive information. You're implementing least privileges, need to know. You're logging activity and parsing those logs to alert on potential malicious activity. You're deploying technologies like endpoint detection and response that does behavioral-based monitoring for anomalous, which we've kind of talked about. All these things to come familiar with. No, insider threat is a growing threat. These are some of the technologies that you can do your term paper on. So endpoint runs on the endpoint. It uses machine learning to detect anomalous behavior, even as little as opening up a command shell, copying large files, rapidly archiving files. All that could trigger an alert, especially if you haven't done something like that in a while. Trying to install applications. It also can enforce policies like no USB devices being connected to any corporate asset. It'll prevent it from happening and send an alert. Data loss prevention works similar to endpoint detection and response, but it also enforces governance laws against sensitive folders and files, not allowing access, monitoring it, monitoring when sensitive information is attached in an email, copied off. It could monitor emails going out before they're encrypted. So it can do a lot in helping to prevent data loss prevention. Application security, as for static code analysis to look for buffer overruns or race conditions in software code. You can try to fix those before you deploy applications into production. Intrusion detection systems that monitors the network. You can put those at your ingress and egress point, your outermost point, right behind the perimeter firewall, to monitor all traffic going in and out of a organization like a university. Intrusion prevention systems, not only does it monitor, but it can block potential malicious traffic. Secure access, secure edge is equivalent to a software-based firewall. You can set up rules to allow and deny access based on policy, based on profiles of users, applications, processes. It can help you implement zero trust concepts in a organization, and it doesn't matter where the person is trying to access company assets. They could be in Starbucks, in an airport, at home, on their own Wi-Fi. It doesn't really matter. And then we've talked about zero trust, and that's basically don't imply trust, require authentication, whether you're a person, place, or thing. And that's it. That's a summary of topics. Um, let's see here. Let me stop sharing this and give me 1 second here. See if I had a, here we go. Let's do the midterm overview. Jump back into the meeting. Let me share this slide deck out. This is week 8. I will post both of these up. I'm on Brightspace. Let me double check. I have a week 7, week 8 and 9, and the midterm. So you want to take a look at those modules for these slides. Let's just jump into it. Yes, I am sharing. I think I'm in read mode. There we go. All right, so endpoint security, just talked about that. EDR technology uses both signature and behavioral-based anomalous detection to detect, alert, and block malicious activity on a endpoint, not on the network. It works on individual endpoints, not at the aggregate level. I'm not going to read these slides. Data DLP, very similar. It does work at the aggregate level. It has software agents that run on endpoints, but it also aggregates that data across the network. It could enforce policies, access policies on sensitive data, on folders, on the file system. It does a lot for you. It's expensive, but it definitely can prevent um, um, unauthorized access. It can enforce data integrity, prevent unauthorized modifications, and by doing those two, it can assure availability of data. Read more about DLP, application security, which includes all types of applications you deploy in an organization, whether it's a proprietary web application to collect information about your customers and provide some information like a mapping application. Web security is required, database security, application security skills, and these concepts called secure by design, meaning you build secure applications that comes with a secure configuration for it so that you're not deploying with, weaknesses like weak passwords or the ability to have backdoors or do buffer overflows or not handling race conditions in your software code. You can handle input validation. You have good authentication. You allow for multi-factor authentication integration into popular tools out of the box. So that's what application security is involved. You can read more on that. Intrusion detection technologies, there's many different kind. There's network intrusion detection. There's host-based intrusion detection, also known as uh, EDR, or antivirus is another form of a host-based um, monitoring software that can alert on. Secure access, secure edge is cloud-based versus something that's on-prem. But it can support your on-prem technology, but it was built for the cloud. And zero trust, which we've kind of already talked about. So for the midterm, you want to go back to really week 1. And we've talked about, what is information security? What are the foundations? Um, like CIA, what are threat actors, what are their motivations, their techniques and tactics. We talked about identity access management. We talked about the different factors of authentication, single, second factor, third factor. Know the difference there, know what mandatory versus um, discretionary access control models are. We talked about cyber alerts and cyber advisories. You should have written your first cyber alert by now. Authorization, attestation, a secure configuration of hardware or software is attestation out of the box. Vulnerability management, remember that's a similar process all the time. You got to know your assets that are running on your system, know all the software and hardware. Prioritize what you want to scan. You don't want to scan systems that are legacy, that are potentially getting ready to be grandfathered out or no longer being used. You want to disable them. Scan systems, know what the vulnerabilities are, prioritize your critical and high findings, fix those, scan again to make sure those findings doesn't show up again, prioritize the rest, and continue that cycle. Security assessments is assessing you against frameworks and control models to ensure that you have policies that basically enforces strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, secure backups, network monitoring, logging, how long you keep the logs, all those are part of assessments and audits. And then auditing and accountability, you can have those if you're doing logging, enforcing multi-factor, making users log into the system. We've talked about networking basics, services, and protocols. You need to know that chart of your basic protocols. What are your standard protocols between 0 and 1028 ports? Talked about basic cyber attacks. Threat event analysis, know what that process is to go through the threat event analysis. You got something monitoring, you get an alert. Um, the SOC analyst or analyst's job is to determine if it's a true positive or a false positive. Is it something malicious happening or not? And how they go about that investigation. We touched on laws and regulations and know what they are, especially in the financial and banking and medical industry, Child Protection Act. Have an idea of what those different laws are. You did your turn, you started on your topic for your term paper, know what indicators of compromise are, file hashes, email addresses, domains, op security, different laws of op security. Focus of op security is need to know. If you don't have a need to know, then that information should be obfuscated or not in your job function, and therefore you don't have access, nor what types of things happen in a security operations center, what type of job function and roles are in a security operations center. We went over the MITRE attack. It's a repository for known and their tactics, techniques, and procedures used to carry out so you can then defend against them. And we covered the introduction to artificial and machine learning as it relates to cybersecurity insider threats, and overview of cyber defense technologies, which are listed here on the screen. And that's it. That's your midterm review. I'm going to stop, and good luck on the midterm.